The Galactic Senate chamber hummed with tension as Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthak Confederation rose from his crystalline seat. His four eyes swept across the assembled delegates, each representing one of the 47 civilizations that made up the mighty Carathian Empire. The air recyclers worked overtime, struggling to manage the mix of atmospheric requirements for so many different species. Esteemed colleagues, Zethkar began, his translator converting his clicking sounds into the common trade language. I stand before you today, not as your enemy, but as someone who has witnessed something that chills my very core. Something that threatens not just our empire, but potentially every living being in this galaxy. High Chancellor Vex Adder, a towering figure from the dominant Carathian race, leaned forward on his elevated throne. His scales shimmered with impatience. The Carathians had ruled this sector of space for over 3,000 years, and their arrogance had grown with each conquered world. Speak plainly, Zethkar. What could possibly threaten the might of our empire? Your confederation lost the war. You have no leverage here. The Vorthak ambassador's mandibles clicked nervously. His people had indeed fallen to the empire's expansion just 50 cycles ago. But what he had discovered during his reconnaissance missions to the Outer Rim changed everything. 27 cycles ago, my scout ships detected unusual energy signatures from a previously unknown star system. Grid coordinates 847 Delta 9. We initially thought it might be a new civilization ripe for conquest or integration. What we found, he paused, his four eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of deep distress among his people. Continue, Chancellor Vex Adder commanded, though his tone suggested his patience was wearing thin. We found humans. A ripple of confusion passed through the chamber. Several delegates activated their personal translators, thinking they had misheard. The term human wasn't in any of their databases. Unknown species designation, announced the chamber's central AI. No records found in Imperial archives. Zethkar activated his holographic display, showing a blue and green planet third from a yellow star. They call their world Earth. Class M planet, nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, suitable for most carbon-based life forms. Population approximately 8 billion individuals. 8 billion, scoffed Admiral Crix from the Military Council. That's barely enough to crew our battle fleets. What makes them so concerning? Their technology level initially appeared primitive. Chemical rockets, basic nuclear capabilities, electromagnetic communications. By Imperial standards, they should have been easy to observe and catalog. We sent probe ships for routine surveillance. The hologram shifted to show sleek Vorthak vessels, their bioorganic hulls gleaming as they approached Earth's solar system. The first probe ship, Seeking Wind, approached their outer planetary bodies. The humans detected it within hours. Not unusual, as most civilizations eventually spot our scouts. However, their response was unprecedented. New images appeared showing primitive human spacecraft, barely more than metal cylinders with chemical propulsion systems. Yet there were dozens of them, moving in coordinated patterns. They launched interceptor craft. Crude, inefficient, but numerous. More concerning was their behavior. Most species, when encountering obviously superior technology, attempt communication or retreat. Humans immediately began analyzing our probe's weaknesses. Admiral Crix laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Surely you're not suggesting these primitives posed a threat to Vorthak bioships. The Seeking Wind reported strange energy readings from the human craft. Then, communications went silent. We assumed technical difficulties, perhaps solar radiation interference. The probe ship was equipped with standard defensive systems, more than adequate against primitive weapons. The hologram now showed debris floating in the dark void of space, clearly recognizable as pieces of Vorthak technology. The humans destroyed it, a craft that could withstand direct meteor impacts, equipped with energy shields and advanced armor. Gone, reduced to scrap by beings who hadn't even achieved basic fusion power. Murmurs of disbelief filled the chamber. Several delegates were now paying closer attention, their earlier dismissive attitudes shifting to concern. I ordered a second probe, the Silent Observer, with enhanced defensive systems and strict instructions to maintain maximum distance. The humans had somehow salvaged debris from the first ship. In less than 6 cycles, they had reverse-engineered basic shield technology and were incorporating it into their own vessels. Chancellor Vex Adder's scales darkened, a sign of growing interest among his species. Impossible. Even our scientists required decades to understand captured alien technology. I thought so too. The Silent Observer reported that human industrial capacity was expanding at impossible rates. They were converting civilian manufacturing to military production across their entire planet. Not just in one or two regions, but globally. Every major population center was contributing. The images showed Earth's surface transformed, with massive construction projects visible even from orbit. Factories, shipyards, research facilities, all growing like some kind of technological infection across the planet's surface. When a Silent Observer was discovered and destroyed in similar fashion, I decided to risk direct observation. I took my personal scout ship, the Whisper in Darkness, equipped with the best stealth systems our Confederation could provide. Zethkar's image shifted to show a sleek vessel, nearly invisible against the star field, its bioluminescent markings dim to avoid detection. What I witnessed from the edge of their system defied everything we know about species development. The humans weren't just building defenses. They were preparing for war against an enemy they had barely glimpsed. Every adult member of their species was contributing to the war effort in some capacity. "You're describing a basic defensive response," interrupted Counselor Yaldes of the Merchant Guild. "Primitive species often unite against external threats. It makes conquering them slightly more challenging, but hardly impossible." "Counselor, with respect, you don't understand the scale. Humans don't just unite against threats. They become the threat. I observed them testing weapons that converted matter to energy on a subatomic level. Primitive fusion reactions, yes, but weaponized in ways we had never conceived. They were building delivery systems that could cross interstellar distances." The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Most species took millennia to develop interstellar capability, and even then, it was usually for exploration or trade. Weaponizing such technology from the beginning was unheard of. I maintained observation for 12 more cycles. In that time, the humans went from crude chemical rockets to antimatter power vessels, from basic electronics to quantum communication networks, from planetary defense to deep space offensive capabilities. Admiral Crix, too, stood abruptly. "You're claiming they achieved 12,000 years of technological development in 12 cycles? That's physically impossible. I have detailed recordings, Admiral. Sensor logs, visual documentation, intercepted communications. They didn't just develop new technology. They perfected it through constant warfare." "Warfare? Against whom?" "Against each other. While building defenses against the presumed alien threat, they never stopped fighting among themselves. Every conflict, every battle, drove innovation at an exponential rate. They would develop a new weapon system, test it in regional conflicts, refine it, then incorporate the improvements into their anti-alien preparations. The holographic display showed human settlements on multiple worlds throughout their solar system, massive mining operations on asteroids, research stations in the void between planets. All of it heavily fortified, all of it producing weapons of increasing sophistication. By the time I departed, they had established military outposts throughout their stellar neighborhood. Their scouts were beginning to probe beyond their immediate system, and their rate of advancement was still accelerating. Silence stretched through the chamber as the implications sank in. Finally, Chancellor Vexator spoke, his voice carefully controlled. "What is your recommendation, Ambassador Zethkar?" "Immediate quarantine of the sector. Deploy our most advanced stealth platforms to monitor human expansion. Under no circumstances should any Imperial vessel enter their territory or attempt contact. These beings represent a threat unlike anything we have encountered. You're suggesting the mighty Carathian Empire should fear a species that hasn't even achieved faster-than-light travel. Chancellor, I'm suggesting we avoid creating our own extinction. The humans I observed weren't just defensive. They were learning, adapting, improving with every challenge. They turned the destruction of our probe ships into technological advancement. They've transformed their entire civilization into a military-industrial complex in less than 30 cycles. And if we simply leave them alone, then perhaps they'll remain content with their own territory. But based on their behavioral patterns, isolation is unlikely to be permanent. They're explorers as much as warriors. Eventually, they'll develop faster-than-light travel. When they do, they'll spread throughout the galaxy. Then we destroy them now, while they're still contained to one system. Zethkar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound of extreme distress. Chancellor, that would be the worst possible decision. My observations suggest that humans don't just fight to win. They fight to survive. Any attack on their homeworld would likely trigger a response that... He paused, struggling to find words for concepts that had no equivalent in galactic civilization. They have a concept called mutually assured destruction. The willingness to destroy yourself to ensure your enemy doesn't survive either. Their nuclear weapons aren't just aimed outward, they're aimed at themselves. They would rather render their own planet uninhabitable than allow it to be conquered. Madness? Perhaps, but effective madness. Any species capable of such extremes would likely have contingency plans we couldn't anticipate. Hidden installations, sleeper ships, weapons caches scattered throughout their system or beyond. Attack Earth, and you might kill 8 billion humans. But you might also guarantee that whatever survivors remain will dedicate their existence to hunting down every member of your species. The chamber erupted into heated discussion. Some delegates argued for immediate military action, others for continued observation, still others for attempting diplomatic contact. Through it all, Zethkar remained standing, his four eyes fixed on the holographic image of the blue planet that had changed everything he thought he knew about warfare and civilization. "There's one more thing," he said quietly, and his tone was enough to restore order to the chamber. "During my observations, I intercepted human communications. They have extensive debates about what they call first contact scenarios. They've spent considerable time planning for meeting alien civilizations. Their strategies fall into several categories, but the most prevalent philosophy is summarized in an ancient human saying." He activated a final hologram, showing translated human text floating in the air before them. "Speak softly and carry a big stick. They're prepared to be peaceful, but only from a position of strength. They assume any alien contact will eventually turn hostile, so they're preparing to make the cost of hostility too high to contemplate." Chancellor Vexator stared at the text for a long moment. "These humans sound like a younger version of ourselves." "No, Chancellor. That's what makes them so dangerous. We conquered through superior technology and unified purpose. Humans are advancing through constant conflict and individual innovation. We build an empire through coordination and hierarchy. They're building a war machine through chaos and creativity. And you believe this makes them superior to us. I believe this makes them unpredictable. And in warfare, unpredictability often trumps superiority. We've grown comfortable with our dominance, confident in our ability to overwhelm less advanced species. Humans represent something we've never encountered, a species that becomes more dangerous when threatened." The holographic display shifted one final time, showing long-range sensor readings of human vessels moving through their outer system, some heading toward the nearest star systems. "My final report indicates they're beginning interstellar exploration. Conservative estimates suggest they'll develop practical, faster-than-light travel within 50 cycles. When they do, they won't be the primitive species we could have easily conquered today. They'll be something else entirely." Chancellor Vexator stood, his full height dominating the chamber. "The Carathian Empire has never retreated from a challenge. We've conquered species far more advanced than these humans appear to be. Chancellor, with all due respect, you've conquered species that wanted to live. Humans seem equally prepared to live or die, as long as they take their enemies with them. That changes the entire strategic calculation. We shall take your warnings under advisement, Ambassador Zethkar. The Council will deliberate and render judgment on the proper course of action regarding this human species." As the session concluded and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Zethkar remained motionless, still staring at the image of Earth. In his mind, he could still see the rapid transformation he'd witnessed, a peaceful, diverse world becoming a unified military fortress in the span of mere cycles. He tried to warn them, try to make them understand that this wasn't just another species to be conquered or integrated. This was something new in the galaxy, something that might just change everything. But as he watched the Chancellor's dismissive gesture and heard the confident discussions of military action among the departing delegates, Zethkar feared his warnings had fallen on deaf ears. The Carathian Empire had grown too accustomed to victory, too confident in their own superiority. They were about to learn a lesson that would reshape their understanding of what it meant to be the apex predator in the galaxy. The humans were coming, whether anyone was ready for them or not. 3 cycles after Ambassador Zethkar's warning, the Carathian High Command gathered in the war planning chamber deep within the Imperial capital ship Eternal Dominion. The massive vessel, larger than most space stations, served as the mobile headquarters for the Empire's military operations. Its halls had witnessed the planning of countless conquests, and today would be no different. Fleet Admiral Draken Seth spread holographic star charts across the tactical display table. The human solar system glowed ominously red in the center, marked as a potential threat zone. Around it, green markers indicated the positions of Imperial fleets, while blue dots represented reconnaissance stations and forward bases. Gentlemen, Admiral Draken Seth began, his cybernetic implants flickering as he accessed tactical databases. The Chancellor has authorized Operation Cleansing Dawn. The human infestation will be eliminated before it can spread beyond its current containment. General Vorthax, commander of the Empire's ground forces, shifted in his environmental suit. His species required a methane atmosphere, making face-to-face meetings challenging, but his tactical expertise was legendary throughout the Empire. Admiral, have you reviewed the Vorthack intelligence reports in detail? The humans have demonstrated concerning adaptive capabilities. I've reviewed them, General. I believe the Vorthack ambassador has allowed fear to cloud his judgment. Yes, the humans show some innovation, but they're still confined to a single star system. We've crushed species with interstellar capabilities. How difficult can it be to eliminate primitives who haven't even achieved faster-than-light travel? Combat Engineer Supreme Clitura activated her own display, showing detailed analysis of human technology based on the captured probe debris. The concerning factor isn't their current capability, Admiral. It's their rate of advancement. Our projections indicate they're developing new technologies at a rate that shouldn't be physically possible. Projections can be wrong, Engineer. What matters are facts. Fact 1. They're trapped in a single system. Fact 2. They lack interstellar military capability. Fact 3. We have the largest fleet in known space. The tactical advantage is overwhelming. Supreme Tactician Mexdow, the Empire's strategic planning specialist, manipulated the holographic display to show fleet positions around human space. Admiral, our standard protocol involves a gradual blockade followed by systematic conquest. However, given human behavioral patterns, I recommend immediate overwhelming force. Explain. Humans appear to thrive on prolonged conflict. Every challenge makes them stronger. A lengthy siege would give them time to develop countermeasures. If we're going to act, it should be swift and total. Fleet Admiral Draken Seth nodded approvingly. My thoughts exactly. Operation Cleansing Dawn will deploy 3 full battle fleets. Fleet Alpha will establish a blockade around their system perimeter. Fleet Beta will neutralize human space installations and orbital defenses. Fleet Gamma will focus on planetary bombardment. Timeline, asked General Vorthax. Deployment begins in 10 cycles. Full engagement in 15. Complete sterilization of the system within 20 cycles. Engineer Clitera frowned at her tactical displays. Admiral, our intelligence suggests humans have been preparing for exactly this scenario. They've hardened their installations, created redundant systems, and dispersed their population across multiple worlds within their system. All the more reason to act quickly. Every cycle we delay gives them more time to prepare, or more time to develop something that could surprise us, Tactician Mexdow added quietly. Admiral Drakenseth's scales shifted to an aggressive crimson pattern. Gentlemen, I understand caution, but we cannot allow fear of primitives to paralyze our decision-making. The Empire has conquered over 300 species. Our technology is superior, our forces are overwhelming, and our experience is unmatched. The humans destroyed 2 Vorthack probe ships. Engineer Clitera reminded him. Probe ships, lightly armed, minimally shielded reconnaissance vessels. Not battle cruisers with full defensive systems and experienced crews. General Vorthax activated his personal communication system, consulting with his staff officers in real time. Admiral, my ground force analysis suggests the human population density makes planetary assault extremely costly. 8 billion individuals spread across multiple worlds with unknown defensive preparations. Which is why we're not planning a ground assault, General. Complete orbital bombardment. Reduce their worlds to molten slag, then send in cleanup crews to ensure no survivors remain. That seems excessive, Ventured tactician Mexdow. Effective. Admiral Draken Seth corrected. Quick, clean, and final. No prolonged conflict, no opportunity for human adaptation, no chance for escape. Engineer Clit Terra pulled up detailed scans of the human system. Admiral, there's another concern. Long-range sensors indicate the humans have been launching vessels toward nearby star systems. Slow-generation ships, taking decades to reach their destinations, but carrying populations and equipment. How many systems? At least 12 that we've detected. Possibly more if they're using stealth technology. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Draken Seth stared at the star chart, watching the red markers indicating potential human expansion routes. When did these launches begin? Approximately 8 cycles ago, shortly after the second Vorthack probe was destroyed. It appears they immediately began planning for the possibility of retaliation. General Vorthax leaned forward. They evacuated their species before they even knew for certain that aliens existed? Not evacuated. Expanded. Intelligence suggests they call it insurance. Spreading their population to ensure survival, even if their homeworld is destroyed. Tactician Mexdow manipulated the display to show the projected arrival times and destinations of the human generation ships. If we act now, we can intercept most of these vessels. However, some are already too far along their trajectories to catch with conventional pursuit. How many systems could potentially harbor human populations? Conservative estimate? 15. Worst case scenario? Over 30. Admiral Draken Seth's confidence wavered slightly. The tactical problem was becoming more complex than anticipated. A simple system sterilization was one thing, but hunting down scattered human populations across multiple star systems was quite another. Engineer, what's your assessment of human defensive capabilities based on current intelligence? Rapidly evolving, Admiral. When the first Vorthack probe was destroyed, humans were using crude kinetic weapons. By the time the second probe was eliminated, they had developed basic energy shields and directed energy weapons. Current projections suggest they may have achieved fusion-powered defensive systems. Fusion power doesn't concern me. Our ships can withstand direct stellar radiation. Admiral, human fusion isn't just for power generation. Intelligence indicates they're weaponizing it in ways we haven't seen before. Focused antimatter containment, plasma cannons that operate at stellar temperatures, gravitational manipulation devices. Impossible. Those technologies require theoretical physics beyond anything in our databases. Engineer Clit Terra displayed intercepted human communications, translated into standard imperial format. They have something they call scientific collaboration. Instead of keeping military secrets within government hierarchies, they're sharing research data globally. Every breakthrough by one group immediately becomes available to all other groups. Madness. How do they maintain operational security? They don't. They've apparently decided that rapid advancement through open collaboration is more important than keeping secrets from each other. Every human scientist is working on the same problems simultaneously. General Vorthax studied the communications intercepts. This explains their impossible advancement rate. Instead of sequential development by isolated groups, they have their entire species working in parallel on every problem. It also means they have no single point of failure, added Tactician Mexdow. Destroy their primary research facility, and a dozen backup facilities continue the work. Eliminate their government, and local authorities maintain the war effort. Admiral Draken Seth was beginning to understand why Ambassador Zethkar had seemed so concerned. This wasn't like conquering a typical hierarchical civilization. The humans had essentially turned their entire species into a distributed military research and development operation. What about their population centers? Surely they have critical infrastructure we can target. That's another problem, Admiral. Human infrastructure is largely automated and self-repairing. They've developed what they call swarm manufacturing, millions of small robotic units that can construct or repair almost anything given basic raw materials. And raw materials? They've been mining their asteroid belt aggressively. Current estimates suggest they have enough stored materials to maintain their industrial base for centuries, even if all planets were rendered uninhabitable. The tactical display updated with new intelligence, showing the vast network of human mining operations, manufacturing facilities, and defensive installations spread throughout their solar system. It looked less like a civilization and more like an immune system responding to infection. Admiral, General Vorthax said quietly, this doesn't look like a species we can simply conquer. They've essentially weaponized their entire existence. Every species can be conquered, General. It's simply a matter of applying sufficient force. What if sufficient force doesn't exist? Asked Engineer Klittera. That's impossible. Admiral, consider their response pattern. They were attacked by unknown aliens with superior technology. Instead of surrendering, negotiating, or fleeing, they immediately began preparing for total war. Not just military preparation, but species-wide mobilization on a scale we've never encountered. Tactician Mexdow pulled up comparative analysis charts. Every other species we've conquered has had clearly defined military and civilian populations. Humans appear to have eliminated that distinction entirely. Every citizen is a potential combatant. Every facility is a potential weapons factory. Every settlement is a potential fortress. You're suggesting we abort the mission? I'm suggesting we seriously consider the Vorthack recommendation for containment and monitoring rather than direct confrontation. Admiral Drakenseth's scales darkened with anger. The Carathian Empire does not retreat from primitives. We've built our dominance through strength and decisive action, not fear and hesitation. Admiral, Engineer Klittera said carefully, there's one more factor you should consider. Human communication intercepts suggest they're not just preparing to defend themselves. They're preparing for offensive operations. Offensive operations? They can barely reach their own outer planets. Currently, yes, but their projections indicate they expect to achieve faster-than-light capability within 50 cycles. When they do, their first priority isn't exploration or trade. What is it? Revenge. They've designated the elimination of the hostile alien threat as a primary species objective. They're not just planning to survive our attack. They're planning to track us down and eliminate us. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The concept was almost incomprehensible. Most species, when faced with obviously superior opposition, focused on survival and appeasement. The idea of a primitive species planning offensive operations against a galactic empire was unprecedented. Show me, Admiral Drakenseth commanded. The holographic display shifted to show intercepted human strategic documents, translated into Imperial Standard, plans for deep space reconnaissance, interstellar pursuit vehicles, and something called extinction protocols designed specifically for dealing with hostile alien civilizations. They're planning to hunt us, General Vorthax said in amazement. Not just us, Tactician Mexdow corrected. According to these documents, they're assuming any alien contact will eventually turn hostile. They're preparing for war against potential threats they haven't even encountered yet. That level of paranoia should make them easier to defeat, Admiral Drakenseth argued. Or infinitely more dangerous, Engineer Klittera countered. Paranoid species that survive tend to become apex predators. Admiral Drakenseth stared at the display for a long moment, weighing options that had seemed simple just hours ago. The tactical situation was far more complex than anyone had anticipated. What is your recommendation, Tactician? Complete containment. Establish a quarantine zone around human space. Monitor their development. Wait to see if they destroy themselves through internal conflict or develop beyond our ability to contain them. And if they develop faster-than-light capability, then we face a species that's had decades to prepare specifically for war against aliens, with technology developed under the assumption that their survival depends on eliminating any potential threat. You're asking me to tell the Chancellor that the mighty Carathian Empire is afraid to attack a single-star system occupied by primitives. I'm asking you to consider whether Operation Cleansing Dawn might be exactly the trigger that transforms humans from a potential future problem into an immediate existential threat. Admiral Drakenseth looked around the chamber at his senior staff, seeing doubt and concern where he expected confident aggression. Perhaps, he thought, wisdom sometimes looked like cowardice to those who had grown too accustomed to easy victories. But the Empire had spoken. Operation Cleansing Dawn would proceed as planned. The humans were about to learn what it meant to face the full might of galactic civilization. The question was whether galactic civilization was prepared for what it would learn about humanity in return. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, humanity's first dedicated deep space warship, as sensor readings cascaded across the main display. 3 weeks ago, The vessel had been an experimental research platform testing new fusion drive systems. Today, it was the tip of humanity's spear, armed with weapons that barely existed in theory 6 months earlier. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the Orc cloud, reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson from the sensor station. Configuration unknown, but the power readings are off any scale we've seen before. How massive? Chen asked, her eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the outer reaches of Earth's solar system. Equivalent to the total energy output of our sun, ma'am. And there are dozens of them. The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of shipboard systems. Everyone understood the implications. The mysterious aliens that had destroyed the probe ships were finally showing themselves, and they weren't coming alone. Communications, any response to our hails? Negative, Admiral. We've been broadcasting on all frequencies for the past 18 hours. No response to standard mathematical progressions, prime numbers, or the universal peace symbol protocols. Chen nodded grimly. Humanity had spent months preparing for this moment, hoping for peaceful contact while planning for the worst. Given the complete communication blackout, it looked like the worst-case scenarios were becoming reality. Tactical assessment, Commander Rodriguez. Commander Maria Rodriguez, humanity's leading expert on theoretical alien warfare, activated her console. Admiral, based on energy readings and formation patterns, we're looking at a full-scale military operation. This isn't exploration or diplomacy. This is an invasion fleet. Size estimates. Preliminary scans indicate over 300 vessels, ranging from what appear to be fighters to dreadnoughts larger than our biggest cities. They've arranged in a standard siege formation around our system perimeter. Time to intercept. At current velocity, approximately 72 hours until they reach Mars orbit. 96 hours to Earth. Admiral Chun activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting to every human facility throughout the solar system. This is Admiral Chun aboard UES Defiant. Code Red has been declared. All civilian populations are to proceed to designated shelters immediately. All military units are to assume combat readiness. This is not a drill. The response was immediate and coordinated, the result of months of preparation and planning. Across Earth, massive blast doors sealed underground cities that had been constructed in record time. On Luna, Mars, and the outer colonies, defensive systems came online with smooth precision. Throughout the asteroid belt, mining platforms transformed into weapon platforms, their industrial equipment repurposed for war. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications station, we're receiving priority transmissions from Fleet Command. On screen, the main display shifted to show Admiral Jonathan Hayes, Supreme Commander of Earth Space Forces, broadcasting from the underground command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain. Sarah, I know you've seen the readings. We're implementing Protocol Prometheus immediately. You have operational command of all deep space assets. Rules of engagement are weapons free the moment they cross the Mars orbit line. Understood, Admiral. What's our strategic assessment? Overwhelming enemy superiority in every category except one. They've never fought humans before. Hayes' expression was grim, but determined. Intelligence suggests these aliens have conquered hundreds of species using standard military doctrine. They expect hierarchical resistance, centralized command structures, and rational surrender when faced with superior force. And they're getting a species that spent its entire evolutionary history fighting itself with increasing creativity. Sarah, show them what human warfare really looks like. The transmission ended, and Chun turned back to her crew. You heard the Admiral. We're not just defending Earth today. We're showing the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. Lieutenant Commander Jackson's console erupted with new readings. Admiral, the alien fleet is moving. They've split into 3 groups. The largest is heading directly for Earth, another's moving toward Mars, and the third is dispersing toward our outer colonies. Classic pincer movement, observed Commander Rodriguez. They're planning to eliminate our defensive assets before focusing on the primary target. Do they know about our outer system installations? Uncertain, Admiral. We've been maintaining communication silence and using passive sensors only, but they have to assume we've militarized our outer colonies. Chin studied the tactical display, watching the alien formations move with practiced precision. Everything about their approach screamed professional military competence. They'd done this before, many times, and they expected to do it again. Helm, Set course for intercept with the Mars-bound group. Maximum acceleration. Admiral, Commander Rodriguez looked concerned. We're a single ship against what appears to be over 100 vessels. We're not planning to win, Commander. We're planning to learn. Every second we can observe their technology, and tactics is data that gets transmitted back to Earth's defense grid. The Defiant surged forward, its experimental fusion drives pushing the ship to velocities that would have been impossible just months earlier. As they approached the alien formation, detailed sensor readings began revealing the true scale of what humanity faced. The alien ships were works of art as much as weapons of war. Organic curves blended with crystalline structures, suggesting biotechnology beyond human understanding. Energy readings indicated power sources that dwarfed anything in human inventory. Weapon systems registered as completely unknown configurations. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Kim. "Admiral, these ships are bigger than we thought. The smallest ones are larger than our battle cruisers. And the largest ones? 15 kilometers long, Admiral. They're cities with engines." Chun felt a chill run down her spine, but forced her voice to remain steady. "All stations begin recording everything. Every sensor reading, every energy pattern, every tactical movement. This data needs to get back to Earth no matter what happens to us." "Admiral," Commander Rodriguez reported, "the alien formation is adjusting course. They've detected our approach. Any communication attempts from them?" "Negative. They're treating us as a military target, not attempting contact. That tells us something important about their intentions," Chen observed. "They're not here to talk." The tactical display showed the alien formation spreading out, obviously preparing to engage the lone human vessel. What concerned Chen wasn't their tactical competence. That was expected. What concerned her was their casual confidence. They were approaching a single human ship like exterminators dealing with a minor pest. Range to target, 2 million kilometers, and closing, Admiral. Begin active sensor sweeps. I want detailed scans of their hull materials, energy systems, and defensive capabilities. Admiral, active sensors will definitely reveal our position. They already know where we are, Lieutenant. Now I need to know everything about them. The Defiant sensors reached out like invisible fingers, probing and measuring the approaching alien fleet. The data that came back was both fascinating and terrifying. The alien ships used energy systems based on principles human science barely understood, armor composed of materials that seemed to be alive, and weapons that operated in dimensions humanity hadn't even theorized about. "Admiral, we're being scanned in return," reported Lieutenant Commander Jackson. "Their sensors are intensive. They're analyzing our hull composition, power systems, everything. Let them look. The more data they gather, the more we learn about their scanning technology." "Ma'am, they're powering up weapons systems." Chun felt her pulse quicken. "Range? 1 million kilometers. Well within what appears to be their effective firing range. Evasive maneuvers. Random pattern. Keep our scanning systems focused on their weapon charging sequences." The Defiant began a complex dance through space, its trajectory shifting unpredictably as Chen's crew tried to make their ship a difficult target. The alien vessels adjusted their formation smoothly, demonstrating coordination that suggested either perfect communication or hive mind operation. "Admiral, they're firing." The main screen lit up with brilliant energy discharges as alien weapon systems unleashed forces that burned across the vacuum of space. The weapons were unlike anything in human experience. Not simple energy beams or projectiles, but something that seemed to tear at the fabric of space itself. Evasive pattern Delta. All power to shields. The Defiant twisted and dove, its crew pressed against their stations by the violent maneuvering. Around them, alien weapon fire created brief tears in space-time that twisted and snapped shut with releases of exotic energy. "Direct hit on forward shields," Rodriguez called out as the ship shuddered under the impact. "Shield strength down to 60%. Damage report. Minor hull breaching on Deck 7. Emergency force fields are holding." "But, Admiral, their weapons are unlike anything we modeled. They're not just hitting our shields, they're disrupting the energy matrices that generate them." Chun gritted her teeth as another alien weapon struck their starboard hull. "Return fire. All weapons." The Defiant's newly developed plasma cannons and fusion torpedoes lashed out at the nearest alien vessel. Human weapons, crude by galactic standards but built with typical human over-engineering and redundancy struck alien shields with surprising effectiveness. Direct hit on the lead vessel. Lieutenant Commander Jackson reported with excitement. Their shields are fluctuating. Impossible. Commander Rodriguez stared at her readings. Our weapons shouldn't be able to affect their defensive systems. Unless their shields are designed to stop more advanced weapons, Chen realized. They might be optimized to deflect sophisticated energy attacks, not brute force kinetic bombardment. The alien formation's response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of weapon systems focused on the Defiant, turning space around the human vessel into a web of destructive energy. But instead of immediately destroying the ship, they seemed to be testing different weapon types, analyzing human defensive capabilities. Admiral, they're studying us just like we're studying them. Then, let's give them something to think about. Chen activated the ship's emergency protocols. All hands prepare for ramming speed. Set course directly for their largest vessel. Mong. Commander Rodriguez looked stunned. They expect rational tactical behavior, Commander. Time to show them that humans don't always fight rationally. The Defiant suddenly changed course, abandoning evasive maneuvers and accelerating directly toward the alien fleet's command ship. The move was tactically suicidal, exactly the kind of irrational aggression that civilized species avoided. The alien response was immediate confusion. Their formations scattered as they tried to understand why a smaller vessel would deliberately charge superior forces. Their weapon fire became less coordinated, more scattered, as tactical computers tried to process behavior that made no strategic sense. Admiral, collision in 30 seconds. Transmit all sensor data to Earth Command. Emergency burst, all channels. Transmission complete, Admiral. All hands brace for impact. The Defiant struck the alien command ship's shields at maximum velocity, its hull crumpling like paper against forces beyond human comprehension. But in the moment before the ship's destruction, its sensors gathered precious data about alien shield technology, hull composition, and internal structure. The explosion was visible from Mars, a brief star that burned brightly before fading into the darkness of space. The alien fleet continued toward its objectives, but their formation was less confident now, more cautious. They had learned their first lesson about human warfare. Sometimes the enemy would rather die than lose. On Earth, in the deep command bunkers where humanity's defense was being coordinated, the data from the Defiant sacrifice was already being analyzed. Weapon designers were studying alien technology, shield engineers were working on countermeasures, and tacticians were planning strategies based on the first real intelligence about their enemies. Admiral Hayes studied the tactical reports with growing concern and grudging respect. They're everything the intelligence report suggested. Technologically superior, numerically overwhelming, tactically competent. But, asked his chief of staff, but they fight like they've never faced an enemy willing to die to hurt them. They expected the Defiant to retreat when faced with impossible odds. Instead, Admiral Chun took a significant chunk of their command ship with her and taught them that humans consider tactical suicide a viable option. That's going to change their approach, make them more cautious. Is that good or bad for us? Hayes studied the incoming reports from observation stations throughout the solar system. The alien fleet was adapting, but slowly, like a glacier changing course. They were methodical, professional, efficient. Caution is a weakness when you're fighting humans, he said finally. We don't fight to win territory or resources. We fight to survive. And when survival is at stake, humans become very creative about what constitutes acceptable tactics. The alien invasion of the solar system was proceeding according to plan, but that plan was about to encounter something no galactic empire had ever faced before, a species that treated warfare as both a science and an art, and which had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing things that didn't want to die. The real war was just beginning. Fleet Admiral Draken Seth stood in the command center of his flagship Cosmic Supremacy, watching tactical displays that showed something he'd never experienced in 3 centuries of warfare: organized retreat. The massive vessel, a testament to Carathian engineering prowess, hummed with activity as his staff tried to understand how their overwhelming invasion had become a desperate fighting withdrawal. Admiral, reported Combat Intelligence Officer Vexera, her normally steady voice edged with something that might have been fear, we've lost 63% of our initial fleet strength. The human resistance is unprecedented. Seth stared at the tactical hologram floating before him. Red markers indicated destroyed or severely damaged Imperial vessels, scattered throughout the solar system like drops of blood in water. Just 6 cycles ago, those same displays had shown green markers representing certain victory. How do we underestimate them so badly? He asked, though the question was more for himself and his staff. Admiral, with respect, I don't think we underestimated their capabilities, replied Chief Tactical Analyst Morduck. I think we underestimated their thinking. Explain. Every engagement has followed the same pattern. We approach using standard Imperial tactics, achieving initial success. Then, the humans do something that shouldn't be tactically possible, and suddenly we're fighting for our lives. The holographic display shifted to show the Battle of the Asteroid Belt, where Imperial forces had expected to overwhelm scattered human mining operations. Instead, they'd encountered a deadly maze of weapon platforms, converted asteroids, and mobile mining equipment that had been weaponized beyond all rational expectations. The humans turned their industrial infrastructure into weapons, Vexthera reported. Mining lasers reconfigured as naval artillery, or haulers loaded with explosives, and used as guided missiles. Even their communication satellites were rigged as kinetic bombardment platforms. That's not possible. Civilian infrastructure can't be militarized that quickly. Unless it was designed from the beginning to serve dual purposes, Morduck suggested. Intelligence now indicates that human civilian facilities have been constructed with military applications in mind from the start. Seth felt his confidence continuing to erode. The Empire had conquered hundreds of species, but always using the same basic approach. Demonstrate overwhelming superiority, eliminate military resistance, negotiate with civilian leadership for peaceful surrender. The humans had systematically destroyed each assumption underlying Imperial strategy. Show me the Mars engagement, he commanded. The hologram shifted to display the disastrous attempt to secure the human colony on Mars. What Imperial forces had expected to be a simple occupation of an agricultural outpost had become a nightmare of urban warfare in pressurized environments where every colonist was apparently a trained combatant. The humans evacuated their civilian population to underground facilities that doubled as military bunkers, reported Vexthera. Every surface structure was booby-trapped. The entire colony was designed as a fortress. Casualties: 80% of the occupation force. The humans fought room by room, corridor by corridor. They used their superior knowledge of the colony's layout to create kill zones and trap our forces in areas with limited escape routes. And when they were finally overwhelmed, they initiated something they called Scorched Earth Protocol. Complete destruction of all facilities, infrastructure, and resources. Nothing was left that could be useful to our forces. Seth's scales shifted to a darker shade of frustration. They destroyed their own colony rather than allow us to capture it. Not just destroyed, Admiral. They contaminated the entire site with radioactive materials, making it uninhabitable for centuries. Then, they transmitted the exact procedures to all other human colonies. You're telling me that every human facility we attack will be completely destroyed rather than captured? Our intelligence suggests that's exactly what we should expect. The humans appear to view denial of resources to enemies as more important than preservation of their own assets. The tactical display updated with real-time reports from the ongoing battle for Europa, one of Jupiter's moons that humans had converted into a major industrial complex. Imperial forces were discovering that the entire facility was essentially a giant bomb, with fusion reactors configured to overload if enemy forces attempted to capture them. Admiral, called out Communications Officer Zekval, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. The first communication they've attempted? Yes, Admiral. They're requesting parley under standard galactic protocols. Seth felt a moment of relief. Perhaps the humans were finally ready to discuss surrender terms. Put them through. The main display shifted to show a human female in a military uniform, standing in what appeared to be the bridge of a warship. Her expression was calm, professional, and utterly confident in a way that made Seth uncomfortable. I am Admiral Elena Vasquez, commanding the Sol Defense Fleet. You are Admiral Seth of the Carathian Empire, I presume. I am. Are you prepared to discuss surrender terms? The human's expression didn't change. No, I admitted. I'm here to offer you one opportunity to withdraw from our system with the remainder of your forces. Stunned silence filled the Imperial Command Center. Draken Seth stared at the human admiral, certain he had misunderstood. You're offering us terms? I'm offering you survival, Admiral. You've lost over 60% of your fleet attacking a single-star system. Your forces are scattered, your supply lines are cut, and you're fighting an enemy that knows this terrain better than you ever will. We still outnumber your remaining forces. Do you? Admiral Vasquez gestured, and data began appearing on both displays. According to our calculations, you have approximately 400 vessels remaining in various states of damage and readiness. We have over 3,000 platforms operational throughout the system. Impossible. Our intelligence indicated minimal human military capability. Your intelligence was accurate, Admiral. 6 months ago, we had essentially no military capability. What you're fighting now isn't our military. It's our entire civilization converted for war. Draken Seth studied the data more carefully. The numbers were staggering. Somehow, the humans had transformed every piece of infrastructure, every civilian facility, every industrial platform into military assets. You've turned your entire society into an army. We've turned our entire society into a weapon, Admiral. Every human in this system is fighting for the survival of our species. Every facility, every resource, every scrap of technology has been repurposed for war. You're not fighting a military force. You're fighting evolution itself. That's impossible to sustain. Your economy must be collapsing. Our economy is war, Admiral. We've streamlined our entire civilization around a single goal, making the cost of invading our territory higher than any rational species would be willing to pay. The implications were staggering. Draken Seth realized he wasn't fighting a conventional military force. He was fighting an entire species that had essentially weaponized its own existence. What are your terms? He asked, the words tasting bitter. Complete withdrawal from our system. Transmission of all data regarding other species in your empire. And a promise that no Imperial forces will return to human space. In exchange for us not following you home. Draken Seth felt his blood chill. You're threatening us? Admiral, we spent the last 6 months studying your technology, analyzing your tactics, and reverse engineering your equipment from the wreckage of your ships. We know where your fleet came from. We know the approximate location of your supply bases. And we know that your empire depends on gradual expansion through overwhelming force against unprepared opponents. Admiral Vasquez leaned forward, and her expression became deadly serious. Admiral, what do you think happens when an empire built on easy conquests encounters a species that fights back? What happens when your other subject races see that the mighty Carathian Empire can be bloodied, defeated, sent running from a single star system? The question hung in the air like a weapon. Draken Seth suddenly understood that the tactical situation was even worse than he'd thought. Losing a fleet was a military defeat. But losing a fleet to primitives who hadn't even achieved interstellar flight was a political disaster that could destabilize the entire empire. You're suggesting that defeating us here would encourage rebellion throughout our territory? I'm suggesting that your empire is built on a foundation of fear and presumed superiority. We've just demonstrated that you're neither invincible nor superior. How long do you think it will take for that news to spread? Draken Seth looked around his command center at the faces of his senior staff. He could see the same realization dawning on them. This wasn't just a military engagement anymore. This was a potential collapse of everything the Empire represented. And if we withdraw, then you have time to reorganize, time to develop new strategies, time to decide whether you want to risk everything on a second invasion attempt. What guarantee do we have that humans won't pursue revenge? None whatsoever, Admiral. We're a species that holds grudges for centuries. But if you leave now, that revenge will be delayed until we develop the capability to reach your territory. If you continue fighting, that revenge becomes immediate and personal. The tactical display updated with new intelligence from the outer system. Imperial reinforcements summoned weeks ago were finally arriving. But instead of salvation, Draken Seth realized they represented more ships that would be destroyed by an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every engagement. Admiral, reported Vexthera quietly. Long-range sensors are detecting human vessels leaving the system. Fast, stealth ships heading directly toward our supply base coordinates. How many? At least 30 that we can detect. possibly more using advanced stealth systems. Draken Seth stared at the display, watching the tactical situation transform from bad to catastrophic. The humans weren't just defending their territory. They were preparing to take the war to the enemy. Admiral Vasquez, he said finally, we accept your terms. Wise decision, Admiral. You have 72 hours to collect your surviving forces and begin withdrawal. Any Imperial vessel remaining in our system after that deadline will be considered hostile and destroyed. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial Command Center in stunned silence. Draken Seth stared at the tactical displays, watching the systematic destruction of everything he thought he understood about warfare and conquest. Admiral, asked Morduck quietly, what do we tell the Chancellor? We tell him the truth. We tell him that we found something in this system that changes everything. Something that represents a threat to every assumption upon which our empire is built. And what is that, Admiral? Draken Seth looked at the displays showing the scattered remnants of his once mighty fleet, then at the countless human installations that had somehow transformed from industrial infrastructure into an unstoppable war machine. Evolution, tactical analyst. We found evolution armed with fusion reactors and a complete lack of respect for the natural order of things. As the Imperial fleet began its humiliating withdrawal from the Sol system, Admiral Draken Seth couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The humans had demonstrated something that would spread throughout the galaxy like a virus. The idea that technological superiority and numerical advantage could be overcome by sheer bloody-minded refusal to surrender. The Empire had created its own worst nightmare. They had forced a peaceful species to weaponize itself completely, and that weapon was now pointed directly at them. The humans were coming, and they would not be coming in peace. 3 years after the failed invasion of the Sol system, Chancellor Vexator stood in the ruins of what had once been the Empire's most secure military installation. The Carathian fortress world of Veltron, protected by defensive systems that had never failed in 2 millennia, was now a smoking wasteland of twisted metal and shattered crystal. Report. He commanded his surviving aide, trying to project authority while surrounded by evidence of complete military failure. General Korthval, his ceremonial armor scorched and his confidence shattered, consulted a tactical pad with trembling hands. Chancellor, the humans have destroyed every major military installation in this sector. 64 fortress worlds, 37 fleet bases, and over 200 support facilities. Our entire defensive perimeter has collapsed. How long did the attack on Veltron take? 4 hours, Chancellor. From the time human ships entered the system until complete facility destruction. 4 hours to eliminate defenses that we believed could hold off any enemy for months. Vexator stared at the wreckage around him, trying to comprehend how the Empire's strongest defenses had become scattered debris so quickly. Explain their tactics. There weren't any tactics, Chancellor. Not in any sense we understand. They didn't attempt to capture or control territory. They simply destroyed everything military-related and left. That makes no strategic sense. Conquest requires holding territory. They're not trying to conquer us, Chancellor. They're systematically eliminating our ability to threaten them or anyone else. The implications were staggering. For 3 years, human fleets had been appearing throughout Imperial space, striking military targets with precision and overwhelming force, then vanishing before reinforcements could respond. They weren't trying to build an empire. They were methodically dismantling one. What about our alliance negotiations with other species? General Korthval's expression darkened further. Collapsed, Chancellor. The Zephyrian Collective has declared neutrality and closed their borders to our ships. The Crystalline Hegemony has signed a mutual defense pact with humanity. The Vorthack Confederation is actively providing intelligence to human forces. The Vorthack are helping them. Ambassador Zethkar personally delivered detailed maps of our fleet positions and base locations to human intelligence services. Apparently, he's been in contact with them since before their initial invasion attempt. Vexator felt the foundations of his worldview continuing to crumble. The Empire's dominance had been built on the assumption that superior technology and coordination could overcome any opposition. The humans had demonstrated something that challenged every strategic principle the Empire understood. Have we established any communication with human leadership? Yes, Chancellor. Admiral Elena Vasquez agreed to a diplomatic meeting 3 cycles ago. And She offered us terms for ending the conflict. What terms? General Korthval activated a holographic display showing a document written in precise diplomatic language. Complete dissolution of the Carathian Empire as a military and political entity. Independence for all subject species. Reparations for aggressive actions against neutral civilizations. And submission to human oversight of any future military development. Surrender, in other words. Total surrender. Chancellor. They're not interested in defeating us. They want to ensure we never pose a threat to anyone again. Vexator studied the terms, recognizing the thoroughness of human planning. This wasn't an emotional response to invasion. This was systematic dismantling of everything that made the Empire dangerous. What if we refuse? Admiral Vasquez was very clear about that. Chancellor, refusal means complete extermination of our species. Not conquest, not subjugation. Extinction. They would genocide an entire civilization? According to their statements, they view aggressive, spacefaring species as an extinction-level threat to galactic civilization. They've apparently decided that some species are too dangerous to be allowed to exist. The concept was alien to everything Vexator understood about galactic politics. Most species, when achieving military superiority, sought to control and exploit their enemies. The humans seem to view certain types of opposition as requiring permanent elimination. Have they made similar ultimatums to other species? Only to us, Chancellor. They've established diplomatic relations with every other major civilization, offering protection and technological assistance in exchange for mutual defense agreements. They're building their own empire. No, Chancellor. They're building an alliance. The difference is that member species retain independence and self-governance. The humans provide protection against external threats and technological development assistance. Vexator activated his personal communication system, accessing intelligence reports from throughout the galaxy. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. Humanity hadn't simply defeated the Carathian Empire. They had replaced it with something fundamentally different. The humans are establishing colonies throughout our former territory. Yes and no, Chancellor. They're establishing research stations and defensive platforms, but they're not claiming territory. Instead, they're helping former subject species develop their own spacefaring capabilities. Why? According to intercepted communications, they believe that diversity and independence make civilization stronger. They want every species to be capable of self-defense. The irony wasn't lost on Vexator. The Empire had ruled through the suppression of technological development in subject species, keeping them dependent and unable to resist. The humans were doing exactly the opposite, actively encouraging technological and military development among their allies. What about our core worlds? Our civilian populations? Untouched, as long as they don't engage in military activities. The humans have made it clear that their conflict is with the Empire as an institution, not with individual Carathians. A new voice interrupted the conversation. Chancellor, that's not entirely accurate. Vexator turned to see Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthak Confederation, flanked by human escorts, walking through the rubble of the destroyed installation. Ambassador, I assume you're here to gloat. I'm here to try to save what's left of your species, Chancellor. The humans asked me to deliver their final offer personally. Zethkar activated a portable holographic projector, displaying terms that were somehow even more comprehensive than the previous ultimatum. Complete dismantlement of all military forces. Transfer of all aggressive technologies to human oversight. Participation in a galactic rehabilitation program designed to transform Carathian society from a conquest-based culture to a cooperative one. And if we refuse, then, in 72 hours, human fleets will begin systematic bombardment of every Carathian world until your species no longer exists. Vexator stared at the alien ambassador who had first warned them about humanity 3 years ago. You knew this would happen. I warned you this would happen, Chancellor. I tried to explain that humans represent something unprecedented in galactic civilization. A species that treats existential threats as problems requiring permanent solutions. How are they capable of such thoroughness? One of the human escorts, a woman with Admiral's insignia, stepped forward. If I may, Chancellor, I'm Admiral Sarah Martinez, commander of the Sol Expeditionary Fleet. You're personally overseeing our destruction? I'm personally overseeing your transformation, Chancellor. humanity learned something important from our history. Aggressive species that aren't completely reformed eventually return to aggressive behavior. We've decided that's an unacceptable risk. So, you're planning to change our fundamental nature? We're planning to give you the opportunity to change your fundamental nature. The alternative is extinction. Admiral Martinez activated her own display, showing detailed plans for what appeared to be comprehensive social and technological reformation of Carathian society. Your choice is simple, Chancellor. Become a peaceful, cooperative member of galactic civilization or cease to exist. But understand that this choice is final. There will not be another opportunity. Vexator looked around at the devastation surrounding him, then at the faces of his surviving staff. Everything they had built, everything they had achieved, everything they had believed in was ending. How do we know you'll honor your agreement? How do we know this isn't simply delayed execution? Because we've already demonstrated our approach with 3 other formerly aggressive species, Admiral Martinez replied. The Kraken hegemony, the stellar predators, and the Iron Hierarchy have all undergone successful reformation. They're now productive members of the galactic community. What happened to their military traditions, their cultural identity? They found new traditions, new identities built around creation rather than destruction. It turns out that most species are capable of remarkable adaptation when survival depends on it. Chancellor Vexator understood, with crystalline clarity, that he was witnessing the end of everything his civilization had represented. But he was also witnessing the possibility of something new, something that might allow his people to survive and even thrive in a galaxy that no longer tolerated military aggression. I need to consult with the High Council. You have 48 hours, Chancellor. After that, the decision will be made for you. As the human delegation departed, leaving Vexator alone with the wreckage of his empire, he activated an emergency communication to all remaining Carathian leadership. The message was simple: surrender or extinction, reformation or obliteration. The mighty Carathian Empire, which had conquered hundreds of worlds and dominated this sector of space for millennia, would cease to exist within days. In its place, something new would emerge, shaped by human ideals of cooperation and mutual defense. The humans had done more than win a war. They had fundamentally altered the nature of galactic civilization, establishing principles that would govern interspecies relations for generations to come. Any species capable of threatening others would face the same choice: evolve or disappear. As reports came in of complete imperial surrender and the beginning of comprehensive social reformation, Admiral Martinez stood in the observation deck of her flagship, watching the sun set on the age of galactic empires. "Ma'am," asked her aide, "what do we do if other aggressive species emerge in the future?" "The same thing we did here," she replied quietly. "We give them one warning, one opportunity to choose cooperation over conquest. And if they choose unwisely, we ensure they never get another opportunity to threaten peaceful civilizations." The galaxy was learning a new lesson, written in the ashes of the Carathian Empire. Humanity would not tolerate existential threats to galactic peace. Those who chose aggression would find themselves facing a species that had weaponized their entire civilization and pointed it at anyone who threatened the innocent. The age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation had begun, and humanity stood watch, ensuring it would continue.